What do you want to?
I left the city, I've been browsing. Treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Smash Accept Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. Lately, we've been telling you guys to sell running backs, to invest into that 2025 class. Today's episode, we're going to talk about those running backs that you should be holding on to, those guys that are good costs, and the guys that you should be fading, the guys that you're just like, you know what, this is the guy I should be selling to get myself into position for this season. Nobody better to chop it up with than my main man, Snoog. How you doing today, brother?
Doing good, Dad. I love running backs. I mean, we've known this for a while now. I'm excited because I just put out a tweet of 5 running back fades that I am just absolutely out on. They're guys that make me go blah when I look at those names. Like, we're chasing upside, we're chasing opportunity. I love to mention that because someone commented actually, like, we're supposed to be chasing just clear volume, clear opportunity costs, and like players that are going to get on the field.
Mm-hmm.
But these 5 players are on bottom 5 to 10 offenses, need 10 to 15 touchdowns to be any sort of relevant. They're not going to catch passes, or they're in a split backfield, or they're just not great. Like that.
Yeah.
That's like, those are the players I'm fading. Like, yeah, I'm sure like one of them will end up being good and pay off at cost. But like, what is Jamal Williams, right? Like, he had like 18 touchdowns and like 1,000 yards, and he had like 13 points per game. That's Zamir White. That's Brian Robinson Jr. Let's jump into the show. I'm fired up now.
I was going to say, man, he just wants to talk about them fades.
Fire me up before I start throwing Mike Tyson hooks.
My fades are completely opposite from yours. But what I want to talk about first, everybody comes to me and there's like, Dad, you said sell running back, so I traded Breece Hall for Drake London in a second. Whoa. That is not what we're talking about. We are talking about trading the middling to lower running backs. Running backs right now from RB 12 to 28 are very similar production. So we're talking about, if you're going to invest in a running back, invest in those guys that are top notch. First, Snoog, what I want to talk about the value of these guys. Today, I posted 6 guys that I think could threaten Christian McCaffrey for the RB1 overall. We've been saying for a while, Christian McCaffrey is a bit of a sell in Dynasty unless you're all in. If you're all in, ride him out, unless you can get Bijan, Gibbs, or Breece Hall. Ride out Christian McCaffrey. The guy that I want to start out with, obviously, I think Breece Hall actually passes Christian McCaffrey this year, even if there's no injury. I know, that's the crazy thing. Right now, you look at what he did from weeks 5 to 18 after the ACL tear. Most people don't look at it. They look at just the overall points, and they see that Christian McCaffrey had more than Breece Hall. Week 1 through 4, coming off ACL surgery, less than 50% snaps in each of the first 4 weeks. I throw that out the window, Snoop, because I look at it and I'm like, this guy from week 5 to 18 was getting over 50% snaps, had 20 plus PPR points per game, 21.2 touches per game, and 9 total touchdowns. And Snoog, when you look at who can be the RB1 overall, I looked at the last 5 years, and it's the following criteria. It's 18 combined touchdowns. I know that's the crazy one. That's what puts you over the top. To put you in contention, it's 280 plus touches. The average is 336. The lowest we've ever had is 280. I could easily see Breece Hall approaching that 300 plus touch this particular season. The floor for your RB1 has been 40 receptions. That was Jonathan Taylor. The average is 78.6. I think there's a real world scenario where Breece Hall catches over 78 passes. He has over 280 touches. The touchdowns are going to be the thing, but you look at him, he had 9 touchdowns last year with some of the worst quarterback play possible. 76 receptions, 6+ per game. That was number 1 in the NFL. I think we see a scenario where Breece Hall he's my dynasty RB1. I think he's the redraft RB1 this year.
Yeah, I love it. I'm always here for Breece Hall hype because last year when he tore his ACL and everyone tells you to fade running backs coming off an ACL tear, I was getting like round 4 and round 3 and 4 of redraft ADP Breece Hall. Drafted him in both my redraft leagues. Absolutely smashed his value.
Well,
like
they say 6% of running backs year 1 off ACL surgery post RB2 numbers are better. 6%. And Breece Hall went out and he was the RB2 overall, not an RB2, RB2 overall. We make the excuses for every other guy, Javonte Williams, all the Kendre Miller, all these other guys that had ACL tears, and we're like, it's year one. We aren't going to rush him back. Breece Hall just is like, you know what? Give me 4 games. I'll tune up for 4 games, and I'll go ham.
Yeah, Breece is as elite as they come. I mean, he's a guy that played behind probably one of the worst, between him and Travis Etienne and probably Alvin Kamara, playing behind like the worst offensive line in the NFL last year, because Breece Hall was literally this efficient behind an offensive line where Zach Wilson had 2 seconds to make a decision or he'd get absolutely smoked. They brought in 2 offensive linemen from the Ravens that were starters. Morgan Moses, one of them, who's a tackle. Brought in Tyron Smith. They drafted Troy Fautanu from Washington. They made moves. Like, they are ready to roll. That team is just... They actually got Olu Fashanu from Penn State. So that's even better. They absolutely loaded up that O-line. If there's a healthy Aaron Rodgers, you're going to see what Aaron Jones did with the Packers with Aaron Rodgers there. But Breece Hall's a way better talent than Aaron Jones ever was in the NFL.
Yeah. Now, some of the trades that I've been seeing recently, and I really got to talk about it. You guys that are on YouTube, we got questions here from Preston Weidman. Says you guys are going to talk about upside of the rookie running backs. I've been talking about how some of these guys are league winners with Trey Benson and Blake Corum and Jonathan Brooks. I saw a trade yesterday, Snoog, that just kind of blew my mind. It was Jonathan Brooks and the 106 for Breece Hall. And I got to look at this and I got to say, you know what? 106, you might get Drake May, but I think Jonathan Brooks, we both have as a top 12 running back already, but the gap between Breece Hall and Jonathan Brooks is massive. Like, we hope Jonathan Brooks could be, Breece Hall light. There is no one aside from Bijan and Gibbs that could put up the same numbers as Breece Hall. So, like, if you could take a pick right now, I'm seeing a lot of people saying, I would give Josh Jacobs in a first. I would give Saquon in a first. I would give Kyron in a first. I'm advocating all of that. I love Saquon. He's going to be a guy that I think, could finish as the RB1 overall. I love Jonathan Brooks. Kyron Williams, you and I both are kind of off a little bit right now. But if you could take one of those 25 firsts and add them to these guys, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs are those running backs that we see, like the 2017 class, that will be RB1s for the next 5 years. Set it and forget it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm sure you saw my tweet the other day. I see 4 clear running backs that are going to contend for the RB1 overall spot. Saquon, Travis Etienne, Jonathan Taylor are like some guys that can be there. I think they have the upside, the potential. But it's Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. And you mentioned that earlier, that you're looking for a guy that could score a lot of touchdowns, 18 plus, 15 plus, but also be a guy that could be 70, 80, 65 plus receptions. Those guys check all that criteria. Actually, Gibbs last year was pacing like 70, 65 receptions, had double-digit touchdowns, and was barely playing. I think he averaged like a 50% snaps or like 43, 47% of snaps. This offense for the Lions, this offense for the Falcons, like, you're looking for teams that are going to be, these running backs that are going to be on good offenses that can catch a ton of passes and score a ton of touchdowns. And those 4 check all those boxes, and they stand out clear to that. They're the 4 that are going to get the volume. There's things you want to look at. Like, you can't just play the guessing game with that. Like, that finishing RB1 overall is actually really hard to do.
Right.
Kamara did it. Like, Zeke never even did it. Like, Christian McCaffrey did it. Jonathan Taylor did it. You gotta have some. Yeah, Eckler did it. You gotta
the key to it all is like we said, it's those pass. It's that receptions, right? And we look at what you said with Jahmyr Gibbs, just like Breece Hall. The final 11 games is when he started playing 50% snap share or more. 9 touchdowns, finished as the RB4, 50 plus receptions, 16 plus PPR points. Like, you got to get to that threshold, Snoog, of 20 plus PPR points. You're not going to be there. There's always 2 or 3 guys every single year that get to that 20 PPR points. And I think you're right. I think there's 4 guys that I think Gibbs, Taylor, Bijan, Hall, Etienne's on the outside. I think Saquon's on the outside. I think Derrick Henry's low-key on the outside because of the touchdowns. Like, he's going to get 18 touchdowns if he stays healthy for all 18 games. Saquon's in that area. My question, back to what we were talking about before, is if you're trying to trade up to Bijan, Gibbs, and Hall, And to me, I have all three in the same tier. I have it Hall, Bijan, and Gibbs. You could argue it however you want. I think a lot of people put Bijan as one. I personally have Hall as one. But these are the three guys I'm willing to trade up for. These are the guys where Snoog, I'm looking at my roster right now, and if I have, my wide receiver 3 is Chris Olave or Drake London or George Pickens, and they're starting to get hype. Now's when I'm like, okay, you know what? Do you want Drake London in a first? Do you want George Pickens a first and a toss-in running back? Because now's the time to buy those guys.
Yep.
They're gonna blow up. All three of them are gonna be in that contention. I'm all for getting those running backs as the last piece of the puzzle. I hate taking them in startups. I despise taking Bijan Robinson over Jamar Chase or Amon-Ra St. Brown or even Marvin Harrison Jr. because I think these guys don't have the same longevity. But when I can get them in my rookie drafts, like we're going to see in 2025, when I can buy them because I have a plethora of other things, I'm not as worried about missing out on a Omarion Hampton as much as I am buying a Bijan Robinson, a Breece Hall, or a Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned the rookie drafts because I have probably 6 or 7 shares of Gibbs and Bijan, and it was on every single team that I was just even if I wasn't even if I made them, I had teams I won the championship in that 2022 season, and I just had someone else's first that landed in the top 6, and I landed Gibbs, or I had a couple teams that I absolutely 1 year punted and got Bijan on all 4 teams. So this is like the type of class where you're not going to even have to do that to get these elite running backs. Like you're going to get Ketcheriah McMillan, Luther Burden, these guys pushed up the boards because they're elite wide receivers, and then you're going to get probably the RB2 or 3 of this class at the 106, 107, which is going to be like a Jonty, Gordon, Judkins, whoever ends up falling in your league, and that's an elite running back, right? That's a guy that's going to be a guy that has the potential to be a guy that catches the 60-plus passes, can score double-digit touchdowns. That's what we're chasing. We're looking for that type of upside, especially at the running back position, because I did a tweet the other day, 7 out of 10 running backs that finished in the top 10 last year had 50-plus receptions. I think 6 or 5 of them had like 65-plus. Only 3 didn't, and they had double-digit touchdowns that finished in the top 10 and a ridiculous amount of rushing yards. So that everyone, I'm just going to do a little like side-by-side comparison. Everyone uses the rushing upside against pocket passers in fantasy football. Like draft Andy Richardson over CJ Stroud because he's going to run. It's the same exact thing, but even better with the receptions at the running back position. It's the most valuable thing you can get at a position is receptions from a running back.
It's what really feeds the fantasy points per touch. And I'm glad you said that because that was something that I really wanted to talk about because I think even Devon Achane is a dark horse guy to be an RB1 overall because you look at your PPR fantasy points per touch. Okay, this is huge because we start looking at running back, Snoog, and it's like right now, only 4 teams had 30-plus carries per game.
Yep.
Only 4 running backs had 17-plus carries per game. So what does that mean? That means there's committees. That means that guys are going to have to catch passes. So if you do not catch passes, your fantasy point per touch is considerably lower because we all know a reception is worth 1.5 a normal carry. So if you're getting receptions, you look at fantasy points per touch leaders of 2023. Number 1, Devon Achane at 1.415. Just to put that into perspective, when Christian McCaffrey blew the roof off the world, when he had his season where he had over 1,000 receiving yards, he was at 1.21. So Devon Achane was higher than that on a points per touch. Christian McCaffrey last year, 1.16. Jahmyr Gibbs, 1.06. Breece Hall, 0.98. And then you look at, Bijan Robinson, 0.90. These guys are, every time they touch the ball, they're getting 1 fantasy point. So it's either a reception or they're getting 10 yards, but they're getting you 1. Those are the guys that we're trying to look for. We're not trying to look for Alvin Kamara. He's at that 0.91. Kyron Williams actually last year was at 0.96. We're going to talk about why in a minute. Jalen Warren, who I absolutely love, 0.96. Jaleel McLaughlin, 1.02. These are the guys I want on my team because they're guys that are propped up by PPR points. They're guys that score those points. The difference being, the perception, what you were talking about, I want those guys that are going to catch passes Those guys on my roster right now, if you look at it, I have very few of the Raheem Mostert type, the Gus Edwards type. They serve a purpose as a deep stash, but they're not the guys I want to build around my fantasy team because they're not catching passes.
Exactly. And that's like Raheem Mostert, how many passes did he catch? Like 25, 30?
Yeah.
And that's a guy that had like 20 something touchdowns, and he was like
21 touchdowns. He's my biggest fade. Now I want to go over this because this is the key to it all, right? Is we talk about how guys get their scoring, right? So I just told you who the biggest points per touch leaders are. The guys with the lowest receptions on that. You look at Gus Edwards, 6% of his fantasy points were on receptions. David Montgomery, 7.9. Derrick Henry, 9.1. Raheem Mostert, 10. Those guys that are 10% of their fantasy points or less are on receptions is very volatile. You look at what they do, and then on the flip side, you look at guys that do the opposite of that. 25% of Breece Hall's points last year were off receptions. 20% of Christian McCaffrey. 21% of Bijan Robinson. That's what you want, right?
That's
Jahmyr
why
Gibbs,
I get a little
23%. They're gonna score no matter what. It's right there on paper.
That's why I get a little weary of Breece Hall, because he literally had like quarterbacks that couldn't throw the ball 5 yards and were getting blitzed out the wazoo. I don't know if he's like with A-Rod gonna be a guy that gets like 80 catches because A-Rod pushes the ball down the field. But I think his floor is like 60, like 100%. 55, 60. I think we see more touchdowns and less receptions, and he's 100%. Still going to be a guy that could be RB1 overall. 100%.
They keyed on him. He had less than 1,000 yards rushing, and I would argue he's the most talented rushing running back in the league. Him and Bijan are 1 and 2 in my mind, and I think they keyed on him so much that I think Aaron Rodgers is going to open that up. Breece Hall rushed for 900. I could see 1,500.
He had 80 receptions. Wiggle. He's 100%. A more elusive JT. That's what
he's
is.
The guy that I want to buy everywhere. So back to what we were talking about before. If you're trading up right now, I mean, would you pay? We'll do a little smash or pass. You have Achane and a random first, or Breece Hall.
I'm gonna take the gamble there and go with Achane. I'm really, really loving Achane this year. Like you said, I'm not worried about Mostert. Tua is a guy that is like, he can be a check down type of guy. Like, he likes to just take the smart thing sometimes. And Achane, I think we just see on the field more. He has that crazy efficiency upside, and he has that double-digit touchdown upside. He's just another guy that I could see with a top 5, top 8 finish. And getting that first on top too, it's like that first could be so much. Like, it could be Breece Hall, it could be an Achane, like it could be anything. So it's like it's a good reduced volatility trade if you need it. But if you're absolutely loaded, I'm fine keeping Breece Hall.
So if Breece Hall gets injured this year, he's still a second-round startup. If Achane gets injured again, I think he falls down to round 4 or 5 range, based off of pedigree, based off of public perception, right? Just because Achane last year got injured, and that's why he's become a value. Like, I was out at the 106 cost because that's what he was going for in February. And then rookie draft came around. They took Jalen Wright, and I've been buying him for 110, 111, 112, and I'm like, I don't know what you guys are doing. That's fine. 1.41 fantasy points per touch is beyond elite. It's beyond upside. And Miami last year had both Achane and Mostert, both of them top 5 or top 12 in carries inside the 10 and inside the 5. Mostert was top 5 inside the 10 and inside the 5. That's why I'm really starting to low-key buy Jalen Wright, and I love Achane, because if Mostert goes down, both of them are going to eat. Both of them are going to put up. There will be 2 RB2s on this team, period. No matter what happens, it's going to be there. How about, let's say you're all in on a contender, but you have a elite young wide receiver core, Saquon Barkley and a late first, or Breece Hall?
Saquon and a first.
See,
I think that's the tier.
That's the line.
Fine.
Yeah. I think that's the line. Kyron, sold.
ETN, Jacobs, I'm taking ETN, I'm taking JT, I'm taking Saquon, I'm taking Achane. Anything after that, see you later.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think that's what we really got to do. If you drafted Jonathan Brooks, and I've seen this happen before, and you can trade Jonathan Brooks in a first for Breece Hall, even if you have to add a second-round wide receiver value like a Chris Godwin, like a Terry McLaurin, I think now is your time to tier up off of Jonathan Brooks to get yourself into that area, because Brooks' ceiling is a top 8 dynasty running back. Right now he's valued at RB10, RB12. So he's kind of almost valued at his ceiling because of the way the rest of the landscape is, right? The rest of the landscape is your whole Kenneth Walker, Isaiah Pacheco, Ramondre Stevenson. They're all good. They're all decent,
Yep.
but you're not going to get yourself there. This is where we got to. So we talk about after Jonathan Taylor at 5, Etienne at 6, Achane at 7, Saquon at 8. Now is when we're starting to talk about why we sell, right? We were talking about how we were looking at things and who we were selling. But for me, it's like, okay, Kyren Williams, let's talk about him real quick, because if I could sell him in that area and I can move up to one of these guys, I love the longevity. I love the upside. I love what we're getting here, because if you look at what Kyren Williams did last year, it was phenomenal. I'm not gonna knock that at all. But the touchdown dependency was very big. Pleasant surprise, RB2 overall, scored 15 touchdowns on 240 touchdowns. That's a 6% rate. That is very high for running backs. The addition of Blake Corum, who we know has a nose for the end zone. Only 12% of Kyren Williams' points came off receptions last year compared to what we're talking about, these alphas. Every single other guy we talk about going ahead of him, the Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Devon Achane, all had reception numbers in their points per game of 20+%. Kyren Williams is down at 12. So will he be an RB1 this year? I think so, but he's not a top-end RB1. He's a back-end RB1. That's why I'm willing to sell him, because he's not going to post those same numbers from the reception standpoint. That's why, that's really what we're looking at. That's why he's a fade for me this year, not because of the talent, but because in that offense, he's not going to catch 70 passes. He is going to run. And if you take away, he had 15 touchdowns, Snoog. If you take away 5 and he has 10 touchdowns, which is a good season, he's RB9. If you take away, if that goes down to 7 touchdowns, he's outside the top 15. You know what I mean? Like, there is a scenario. Touchdowns are the least dependent thing we can bank on, because they vary year to year and game to game.
Exactly. And what is the Rams offense? Good, right? Let's play a little game now. Let's play a little over-under game, because I'm going to just run you through the 5 fades that I have today for running backs, and I want you to just give me an over-under the amount that I give you. Devin Singletary, 10 touchdowns or less.
6. So way less.
Tony Pollard, 10 touchdowns or less.
I like Tony Pollard, but I prefer Tajay Spears. I think Spears actually runs away with the job. It's a 1A, 1B, and Tony Pollard had 10 touchdown upside with Dallas, but I think he's more like 6 to 8 max with them. I could see maybe crossing 10 with the receptions if something were to happen to Spears.
What about Javonte Williams?
No.
Over under?
No, way under. Way under. I think what I want for Javonte Williams, and Javonte Williams is between a fade and a buy for me, because what I want is I want the Broncos to cut him. Broncos are talking about him cutting either him or Samaje Perine. Samaje Perine was 3rd in fantasy points per touch. Let Samaje Perine go to Dallas. Let Javonte Williams go to Dallas. Now all of a sudden they're cooking. But in Denver, no one's scoring 10 rushing touchdowns in Denver.
What about Brian Robinson Jr.?
Nope. Austin Eckler has had a nose for the end zone. I think Brian Robinson Jr. is comfortably in that 6 to 8 range as well.
Zamir White.
Don't like the offense, but I do think Zamir White will be the goal line back. But how often are they going to be in the red zone? I think if any of those fades score 10 touchdowns, it's Zamir White, because he's over the last 4 games, I believe he scored 4 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns. So he had a nose for the end zone. He's going to be the only guy. So that's the only guy I would say could do that.
So what do those 5 guys not have in common with the guys you listed earlier on? The Derrick Henrys, the Gus Edwards.
Two things. Two things, real easy.
They
don't score 3 things. They don't score touchdowns. They don't catch passes, and they're not in elite offenses. That's
elite
what's called
offense. Elite offense.
All 3 of those make it a fade.
Bad RBs on bad offenses that don't have double-digit touchdown upside and don't catch passes. Absolutely fade. Don't even touch them.
I'm fading the 3 guys that are on good offenses or decent offenses, but they scored way more than touchdowns than anticipated. Even David Montgomery, you look at what he did last year, 13 touchdowns. That's 6% again. That feels really high, considering if you look at weeks, the final weeks 7 to 18, Gibbs had 11 touchdowns. 7.9% of Montgomery's points came off receptions. Gibbs is going to see more touches. Gus Edwards, I love Gus Edwards. I think he'll do all right in this offense. With 13 touchdowns with the Ravens, that's 7% of your fantasy points coming off touchdowns. And now you go to a much worse offense. I think he still could be a guy that post 700 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns, but not 13. He had 895 yards and 13 touchdowns. Raheem Mostert is the one that is just, if I can get any second for Raheem Mostert, I'm doing it, because 21 touchdowns on 224 touches is 1 touchdown per 10 plays. That's the highest we've seen in the NFL in years.
Crazy.
Banking on a 32-year-old running back who had 200 touches back-to-back years with very minimal receptions. If you take him out, all right, let's say his touchdowns total falls to 10. Okay, he was the RB4 in a lot of formats. In standard, he was the RB2. If he goes from 21 touchdowns to 10, he's outside the top 20. If he goes 21 touchdowns to 6, he's outside the top 30 running backs. That's a huge drop-off. Touchdowns are the least correlation to fantasy points because they're so unpredictable. It makes it very difficult. So those are kind of the guys that we're considering fading in that range. How many guys do you have right now that you would say you would buy for a random 25 first? And this is where everybody starts to chime in. We talked about, our elite 7, Kyren Williams, or a random 25 first.
Ooh. If I'm a serious contender, I'd probably take the bargain on Kyren. I'm in on Kyren in redraft. I'm out on him in Dynasty.
Yeah, I think I've come around on Achane and Kyren where I'm like, you know what? You want to offer me something in next year's 108 to 112? Smash. I'll take them because I'm going to get the production.
Gamble. Yeah, it's
right.
Worth it.
And that's where it's a late first. And you and I are very good at determining what's a late first. We get ourselves into that area. Late random first or Josh Jacobs?
I'd probably go with the random first.
It's got to be late.
I'd rather go give up a second and go get Mixon or Kamara and get the same production.
Exactly. And that's what we keep saying. For me, I'm really buying in on Marshawn Lloyd and trying to get him in toss-ins, before people start to realize that he is the clear RB2 there, has upside to literally, if Josh Jacobs were to go down to injury on week 2, Marshawn Lloyd could be an RB2 all year and take over the starting job.
Let's touch base on that a little bit. Give me your 5 favorite running back handcuffs. Like, Marshawn Lloyd's one of those guys that has that elite upside if someone goes down. I'd throw Kendre Miller in there. Now give your guys.
Number 1, without a doubt, is Trey Benson. Trey Benson is a league winner. If James Conner goes down, Trey Benson will be a top 12 running back and will instantly be inside the top 10 dynasty running backs because he's not going to look back. James Conner then becomes an afterthought in this offense. James Conner always gets injured. And I think Trey Benson has a little bit of upside already. So I'm agreeing with you 100% on Marshawn Lloyd. Kendre Miller, I have in that fringe top 5 area. I think Jalen Wright, for the reason that we were just talking about. Jalen Wright was someone that you and I loved in the process, an absolute track star, someone that has tons of ability in a McDaniels offense where when Mostert goes down or if Achane goes down, he's going to instantly fall into either role because I think he can do either role and become an RB2. And that bumps his value up considerably. I love, and I don't know if you can even call him a handcuff, because these guys are all like borderline. Tajay Spears. Tajay Spears is not, I think he's technically the 1A to Tony Pollard's 1B, but I think he would actually ascend into that area. Blake Corum, I think would, again.
He'd be unreal.
I think he would be fantastic in that situation. Kendre Miller, those are my top 32 running backs. Then I start to look
Charbonnet.
That's where I was getting there. Charbonnet's on that list, but I don't love him because he doesn't catch passes as much. But I think this new Seattle offense is going to be different. So I'm willing to reinvest in both Walker and Charbonnet. I think Chase Brown in a points per touch basis was someone that was worthwhile. I think, there's so many guys where
what about
then
Rico
you go,
Dowdle?
I love Rico. Yeah, we go deep into the guys.
We've been owning Rico for a while now.
Now I'm getting down to my RB 40 to 48, and this is where I start to really just start. I want 4 of these guys on my roster. I want Jaleel McLaughlin. I want Jerome Ford. I want Tyler Algier. I want Tyler Chandler. I want Kamani Vidal at this point just because it's a dart throw. I want Ray Davis. Ray Davis will be a top 15 running back. And this is what everybody keeps saying to me. Dad, you keep saying these guys will be, he's in Buffalo. He's going to score at least 6 touchdowns this year. If James Cook goes down, I could see Ray Davis being a top 15 running back. I see him as a guy that just into that area where he would score touchdowns like crazy. Bucky Irving would be nice, little surprise towards the end of the year. Tyrone Tracy. I mean, there's so many guys, but back to the top 5. I think for me, I don't really look at Jalen Warren and Tajay Spears as backups. I look at them as flex-worthy guys. Both of them, though, the points per touch, the efficiency, those are 2 guys that I'm buying on all my dynasty teams as 0 RB because they have high RB2 potential. They've in college have had higher workloads. They've shown what they can do in a per touch basis, and I love both of those guys. So the rookies, for sure, Corum, Wright, Benson, Lloyd, smashing them. And then I'm really getting in on Warren and Spears. So I get excited. I know you
we'll
mentioned
do a whole
that
show on this. We'll do a whole handcuff show.
We just did. It was beautiful. No, it's so much fun to go over that. Rico Dowdle is one that I've gotten thrown in on deals. I've gotten thrown in for a 4th round pick. And I think there is a real world scenario where he scores more points than Zeke this year. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds insane just because you're talking about name cachets, but he's got some upside.
Yeah.
Any guys I missed there? Because I know I went on a rant. I know I got excited there, but what did I miss anybody?
I don't think so. I think you hit the head on everybody. I would say that you could even get like cute with it and you can go like Khalil Herbert or Roshan Johnson.
Yeah.
You look at some of these elite offenses and it's like, okay, like what about the Chargers? Like you said, Kamani Vital, or you go to a team like the Chiefs. Who's the handcuff RB there now? They're saying Deneric Prince. Like that's a deep guy there. You can even go to the Jaguars. Like is Tank Bigsby finally going to be that elite handcuff that we all thought he was going to be?
Yeah.
There's a lot of these guys. Like you go to the Eagles, back to the Eagles. Is it Will Shipley? I'm targeting the elite offenses and looking at who that backup guy is or who has a chance to become that backup guy. And I'm buying into those guys at cheap costs.
Same. Back to Rico Dowdle. Right now he's going as RB43 in redraft, 18th in juke rate last year, 9th in yards created, 3rd down back in college. They've improved the offensive line. I think there's a ton of upside there. I'm glad you mentioned that because as far as the handcuffs, because I have a special section in the Patreon where I rank all 32 handcuffs. And I put not just who the next guy up is, but Snook, if you look at my good rosters, I have Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Drake London as my wide receivers, a couple other, upside guys like George Pickens on my bench. I have the running backs. And then I have 6 to 8 of these guys. Like these guys are lottery tickets that end up winning you championships. And sometimes it's not just the next man up, but it's the guy after that. It's that 3rd guy up. And that's why we really start paying attention to, what's going on in a lot of these running back rooms. If you guys are interested, right now the Patreon is the place to be because we have all of our redraft rankings. Snook and I put our top 250 redraft. We have all of our dynasty top 250, positional tiers, value charts, literally everything you want, plus access to us for as low as $5 a month. It's whatever tier you want. But for $5, bro, you come in there, there's 300 plus guys talking shop. You get Snoog, you get myself, you get all the content, $5. If you don't like it, hey, it wasn't much of an investment. There's like 20 cents a day.
We're building out the whole redraft section too right now. We're in the process of that. We'll help you draft your redraft teams as well. That's going to be a service available shortly. So we're absolutely cranking right now.
Yeah, for sure. Back to I want to talk a little bit more because this is we got excited there. But to be the RB1 overall, that gives you a 50% better chance to win the entire ship. Year in and year out, it's been proven. You have that RB1 overall, you are going to put yourself into contention. And let's talk Bijan Robinson here real quick because a lot of people have been criticizing me where I say he has an opportunity. Top 7 last year in targets, receptions, yards per carry, rushing yards as a rookie. 7th all time in targets as a rookie. You look at what he did on a per touch basis, and that's where it really gets exciting. Missed tackles, 4th. Yards created, 5th. Yards per touch, 9th. And if you tell me that he is not going to improve on 4.8 yards per carry and that low touchdown total, when
4.8 is good though. That's
I know.
Like a good
no,
number. That's a
I
great
think he's
number.
up. I know, but I think he goes over 5.
They have an elite offensive lineman, best guard in the game, Chris Lindstrom. They got tackles there, Jake Matthews. Like that offense with Kirk Cousins is going to boom.
A 53. I looked at this. This blew my mind. A 53-47 split last year with Tyler Algier. They are not going to do that this year. If he gets a 70%, even a 65% based off what he did last year, he would have finished as the RB3. So like if you just prorate what he did with 65 and 65-35 split instead of 53-47 with Tyler Algier, which is just ridiculous. Tyler Algier is a nice handcuff. He was an RB2, but he's not Bijan Robinson. You want to win. This is the year Bijan and Breece really take you to the promised land.
Yep, it is. I absolutely agree. Throw in Gibbs too.
You zoned out. You wanted nothing to do with Bijan Robinson.
Gibbs is coming too.
Yeah, we got Gibbs on there too. You know what I mean? And I also look at Jonathan Taylor as the one where I go back and forth on, and I need you to help me sell on this because I was like, okay, Anthony Richardson's not going to allow it. And then I started to look a little bit deeper. He was the RB1 in 2021, 2024 or 2023, the final 8 games, 17.8 fantasy points per game. That's almost at that RB1 overall level. 155 carries, 704 yards, 7 touchdowns. I think this is a guy that, he has the ceiling of an RB1. The receptions should go back up. But what do we do with Anthony Richardson, right? Like at first glance, I'm like, Anthony Richardson is going to score 15 rushing touchdowns and Jonathan Taylor is going to get back down to 10. But then you look at what Gus Edwards did with Lamar. I mean, the Colts offensive line is special. So can Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson coexist in the goal line?
Yeah.
We know he has a home run threat, but can they coexist?
Yep, but Michael Pittman won't. I guarantee Michael Pittman has less than 5 touchdowns or 5 to 6 touchdowns this year.
I give him an 8. I give him an 8 ceiling.
He's a fade, but yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson are gonna do good, kind of. Honestly, like bouncing off each other, like they're gonna benefit each other.
What do you think combined they get touchdown wise? Rushing.
I wouldn't be shocked if they had 20 touchdowns total.
I was gonna say 20 to 25.
If Richardson's fully healthy and playing the whole season.
Yeah. And if he's not, Joe Flacco's the quarterback who throws to the running back a lot.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Taylor might be worth more at that, like at some point.
Yeah, I agree.
Saquon Barkley's an interesting one. Obviously tied in 2019 with Christian McCaffrey. Over his 5 full seasons in New York, 4 out of 5 seasons with 16 plus fantasy points per game. 5 out of 5 with 50% or 50 receptions or more. 5 out of 5 with 70 targets or more. Now he goes to Philly, top 5 O-line, 5th most runs per game. The floor is DeAndre Swift, right? 229 runs for roughly 1,000 yards and 49 receptions. The ceiling, though, what is the ceiling of Saquon Barkley in 2024?
RB1 overall. If he truly, if he can catch 50 passes, score double-digit touchdowns, and rush for 1,300.
He did that last year with the Giants.
Yeah, he could be an RB1 overall. I'd like to see Hurts throw a little bit more checkdowns, but
I think we see that everybody's been criticizing me for that with Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts is going to throw more. Kellen Moore's offense throws the ball more than what we had last year. I think Jalen Hurts is going to run for less touchdowns. Saquon Barkley will run for more touchdowns, and Jalen Hurts will pass the ball more. I really want to see A.J. Brown in that CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen type role. You know what I mean? Where we just see – we know his number one receivers in the Kellen Moore offense eat. So I think it opens up for Saquon Barkley, and we might see an offense a little bit different than what people are used to in Philadelphia. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it all day, baby.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait. I think Saquon's finally going to be revived. I mean, watching him on that Giants team all those years was painful because he was a guy that was just so fun. He came in as a rookie, was absolutely elite. Almost RB1. Did he finish RB1 overall as a rookie?
Yes,
I think he
2019, yeah.
Wow.
2018, it was 2019. He was a rookie in 2018.
I thought he finished RB1 overall as a rookie.
Yeah, we'll look that up afterwards. But he, within the first 2 years for sure.
He was. He finished RB1 overall in PPR as a rookie.
You were a young child then.
1,300 yards, 11 touchdowns, 91 receptions, 720 yards.
That's crazy.
Is that Jahmyr Gibbs I see?
What's that?
I said, wait, is that Jahmyr Gibbs I see all over again?
I love it. The other guy I have in that list right now.
ETN.
No, I actually have Derrick. I have Derrick Henry. So I'll let you. I'll go quick on Derrick Henry. So Gus Edwards right now finished as RB24. Okay. And he had 187 fantasy points with 13 touchdowns. I think Derrick Henry scores 5 more touchdowns and has the upside to rush for another 400 to 500 yards. You add that together, and that puts you as the RB3 last year. The PPR points, That's what's going to be it. Is he going to be able to catch 40 balls? He's done it in the past. Lamar doesn't really push for that, but I think the touchdown and rushing total to try to keep Lamar safe, I think Derrick Henry they're just going to feed him the ball. I'm buying him for a late first, early second all day. But Travis Etienne, I'm with you too.
Yeah, I mean, Travis Etienne, let's just talk about what the Jags were as an offense first, just quickly. Trevor Lawrence was injured all season, had a down year. Jags had a terrible offensive line, tons of injuries. Calvin Ridley couldn't put it all together. That offense should have been in the red zone way more than it was last year, and Travis Etienne still had 12 touchdowns. Finished RB3 overall, 17 points per game, 1,400 plus yards, back-to-back 1,400 plus total yards seasons. If he does it again this year, he joins Christian McCaffrey, which is very elite company to do that 3 straight years. He caught 58 passes last year. The year before, it was 35. People were worried about that. Big upstick in catching passes. That's like a 23% or 23 catch swing. I think he could be a guy that's in that 65, 60 range, 70 range if he really hits that like true ceiling. Trevor, it's just going to come down to, is Trevor Lawrence going to throw the ball down to the check down?
Yeah.
If he pushes the ball downfield way too much, I think with this season, with a better offensive line, he's going to have more time. I think he's going to be more likely to give the ball to Travis Etienne a little bit more. I mean, Doug Peterson and Press Taylor wanted to get the ball to Etienne out of the backfield. There was a lot of screens, bubble screens, and stuff like that, which was cool to see. He's just an elite talent that was utilized kind of properly, but could have been utilized better. I think just a better O-line and Trevor Lawrence being healthy is just going to be huge for him. And I think he's another guy that he could be like that Raheem Mostert that scores 20 touchdowns. Like, that's the type of talent, that's the type of position he's in. I think he's going to be probably more in that like 12 to 15 again, but I think 1,200 to 1,300 rushing yards, you're going to see an upstick in efficiency with a healthy offensive line in Trevor Lawrence.
RB3 overall last year. I hate playing overall, but you look at weeks 5 to 11, he was the RB1 overall. Like, in that time, he was the RB1. 0.86 fantasy points per touch. That's in that range that we want of almost 0.9. So almost a fantasy point per touch. Receiving yards as a rookie, receptions as a rookie, 35. Last year was 58. If we can stay in that 50 range, I think that's a realm of possibility. Rushing touchdowns as a rookie, only 5. Last year, 11. If we can say 10 plus, we're there. Snoog, what people don't realize is he played on the worst offensive line for adjusted yards before contact. There was only one running back in the entire NFL last year who had less than 1 yard per adjusted yards before contact. It was Travis Etienne at 0.9. Everyone else was at least getting 1 yard before they were getting hit. He was getting hit behind the line. The offensive line improved somewhat. They went from 32 ranked on PFF to 24. So it's better. It's not Mounds better. It's not Leafs better, but it's better.
That too.
I think so too. And I think he is going round 4 in redraft, and he is going round 5 in dynasty startups. And I'm just like, wow. I mean, I've done 4 startups and I've drafted him in 3 of them because you're getting a guy that has top 5 to top 3 upside year in and year out, who's still young, whose injury history. I know he had the ACL tear his senior year there, but he's still relatively young. He's still relatively elite. I think he's right in that fringe there where we talk about Achane, Taylor, and Etienne, where those like, they're in a weird spot. They're like the 3 guys that aren't the 3 studs, but they're not older like McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley. It's like they're in that area where I'm comfortable buying any of those right now at cost.
Yeah, exactly. I think Etienne is a guy that has that dark horse RB1 overall upside this year. And I think last year he wouldn't have ever been the RB1 overall. But if we looked at his efficiency the year before with a decently healthy offensive line, 5.11 yards per carry, which if he just had like 4.5 last year, he would have had like 1,200 yards. And he would have finished over Mostert for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm, like I said, I keep diving into these hyper efficient guys where I can get Chase Brown, Tajay Spears, Jaylen Warren, all who were over 1 fantasy point per touch. We know that they're going, like I said, honestly, there was 4 teams that ran the ball 30 times. Bears, Browns, Ravens, Falcons. Ravens, we already know it's going to be Derrick Henry. It's going to be Lamar. Falcons, we already know Bijan's going to be there. Browns are a fun one, Snoop, because everyone's really kind of Nick Chubb's really starting to get some weight just because he's been squatting 500 pounds. But Jerome Ford is still a phenomenal deal. And the Bears ran the ball 30 times. I think that's going to change because a lot of that was Fields. A lot of that was kind of where we're at. But I think, that makes Swift a decent value. That makes Herbert or Roschon, whoever you believe in, more a solid handcuff. And then only 4 running backs had 17 plus carries. It was Kyron, CMC, Saquon, and Jacobs. I think all 4 of them are still going to be in that 17 plus. We could see a couple other guys, but as the whole at the position, the amount of high efficiency guys, the amount of committees, that's why Snook and I have been saying, trade off Kyron Williams for Joe Mixon. Get Mixon in a first for Kyron in a second. Just insulate the position because outside the top 7, it's all about how you're going to insulate. It's all about how you're going to get yourself set because we will see running back injuries. You want to have as much depth at the running back position as possible. And if you can go out and buy these guys on the cheap, you do it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think targeting, just like I said back to earlier on in the show, targeting those elite handcuffs on those elite offenses is definitely the way to go. Especially for that last 4 or 5 week stretch to the playoffs and into the fantasy championship.
Yeah.
If you get a starting Marshawn Lloyd and a starting Kendre Miller, you're going to get RB1 overall or RB1 production or a strong RB2 production.
Well, and that's the difference. A lot of people come up to me and they're like, well, Antonio Gibson's the handcuff or the second running back for now he's on the PUP list. But for the Patriots, who cares? They're not going to score a ton of fantasy points. I would prefer low-key Ray Davis because I think he's going to score. Is Antonio Gibson, his PPR points ever going to get you in his lineup without a Ramondre Stevenson injury? He shouldn't. But if both James Cook and Ramondre Stevenson go down, Ray Davis has more upside because he's on a better offense. He's going to give you that higher ceiling, and that's where, do I want Chuba Hubbard or, like a guy like Tyler Algier? I would rather have Tyler Algier because I think gives you more upside to score fantasy points there. So just wanted to bring you guys that information.
Bye.
Love you guys, that you guys are asking questions on YouTube. We're on there. Make sure you guys smash the subscribe for that. Our guy Brock Dynasty just put out an absolute fire, running back windows that we love to smash for your best ball drafts. Right now we're doing best ball. We partnered up with Underdog. You get up to a 50% match on your first deposit. Put in code SMASH accept. So many different things, so many fun things to do. 9 days from training camp. Can't wait. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the process. Yo, running backs, we just get too excited. We're just like, hey, we got to talk. We got to talk. You start talking about.
You're still live.
I'm still live. I put it as end stream. Is it? It's still going. That's fine. We're still talking running backs. Mm-hmm. Why is this not ending though?